In this video, I'm going to go over the setup for getting your type portraits ready, and then the steps for manipulating the text forms in Illustrator. So I'm over here in Illustrator, and I created a new document that is our standard file size, which means it is 11 inches wide by 8.5 inches high, so it has a horizontal layout. And I've already put in my boxes. Those guys are just using that rectangular tool, and they have a black stroke of 1 point. And then I did the techniques that we've already talked about just to be able to duplicate and repeat them. And then I've added the text that you can get from Blackboard. So each one of these boxes has a different text, and just please use the text that I have in Blackboard. So on Blackboard, my name is, and then that's blank, and I'm a chameleon, I'm an acrobat, I'm an amphibian, so on and so forth. And the last one, you get to choose whatever you want. So the first thing I want to talk about is just this layout and setup. So what I'm looking for is I want my name is on all of the rows to be at exactly the same level, and the same thing with the personality type down here. And I'm looking that you have even spacing, so even margins on the left and the right side, and even spacing in between your columns. So just as a review, we know that we can pull up our rulers and our guides by going up under View. As a shortcut, if I click into the space outside, I can also right-click and choose Show Rulers. So now I get my rulers, and then you know how to create the guides by you clicking and drag down. This one already has guides, so I'm just going to choose Show Guides. And you can see what the setup should look like before you even start typing. So here I have a guide not only for the top of my boxes, but I also have a guide for the bottom of my text, for both the text that's on the top that says my name is and here. So that's how I'm making sure that all of these are level. And then I've used my guides to make sure that I have my spaces in between. If you ever create a guide and then it's not in the right spot and you want to be able to move it, if I right click, and I think I've actually already unlocked mine. I already locked mine, so I'll lock it again. So yours by default, you can't move them, and I am using the selection tool here. If you right click on a guide, you can choose Unlock Guide, and now with that selection tool I can move it. So that can be really useful because sometimes we don't have things exactly where we anticipated when we first made the guide. Okay, so this is what your setup should look like, 11 by 8.5, and have all of your guides, draw out your boxes, and I'm not specifying the size of the box. I'm letting you guys figure that out. This one is the longest one, so you may want to create that one first. I'm using a size 12 point for my font, so you may want to go ahead and use that one first, and then figure out how many inches that is, and then create the rest of them from there. I'm going to start with the one for I'm an acrobat. I'll take the text tool and type my name in, Kira. Oops, not Zira, Kira. So it comes in, and it was at black by default. I could select that text, and I could go up to my options bar here and choose a different color, or I could go down to my color picker, double click the foreground color, and I could use this slider to get into a range of different colors. So let's say I want something within the blues, and then I'm going to choose the specific color I want here. So whatever I've clicked on, it gives me the sample of the color so I can see it isolated, and it compares it with the previous color, which can be useful if you're looking for colors within the same hue, maybe just slightly brighter or darker, so you'll have that comparison. And I'll click OK, and now it becomes that color. Click outside and you can see. And I'll show you how you can take the individual letter forms and change those as well. I could just select a single letter and do the same thing. And I'll just make this one a darker color. Okay, so now that one is a darker color. Alright, so the first thing I want you to do, once you've typed in your name, and remember you can use your whole name or nicknames, whatever, and it doesn't have to be the same one for each as long as it's your name. And I'm going to right click, I have to be back, sorry, I'm going to take my selection tool, I'm going to right click on this, on my text, and I'm going to choose Create Outlines. And what this did was it created a lot of anchor points. So I switched over here to my direct selection tool, and I'm also going to zoom in. so you can really see what I'm talking about. So it created outlines and it added these individual anchor points all throughout my name. So taking that direct selection tool, so we haven't used that one yet, we've just been using this kind of more general selection tool. I'm going to click outside of my name to deselect everything, and then I'll just click on the one letter I want to work on and choose, for example, one of these anchor points. I've clicked on this one. I can now tell that's the one selected. It's colored in red, and I could click and drag. So this is I definitely want you're welcome to manipulate these letter forms in all different kinds of ways. And as I wrote on the instructions, you could bring in images. You can explore a lot of these tools, but I would like you to try to create outlines and explore manipulating the letter form this way as well. Okay, so I'm just going and clicking on the individual anchors and then manipulating them. Let's say I wanted something that I want to add some additional anchor points. So let's say I want to be able to grab something here in my R, the R in my name, and be able to move it out. So I'm going to go over to my pen tool and choose Add Anchor Point tool. And with that tool, I could click anywhere I want along this path, and I've now added an anchor point. Switch back to my direct selection tool, and I could now take that anchor point and drag that part of my letter out. So as you notice, I'm getting just points. What if I want some of these to be curves instead? So with this still selected, I'm going to go up to my options bar, and where it says convert, I'm going to choose the option to convert it to a curve. So now whatever I had selected now switches to a curve. I'll do one over here. So let's make this point. I've selected the tip here of the K, and I'll switch it to a curve, and you can see what that ends up doing. I get these handles, and I can click and drag these handles to manipulate the curvature. Okay, so you can kind of experiment and clicking and dragging those around. Okay, and so now I have just one letter form selected, and if I wanted to, I could go and manipulate that color as well, just like I did when I had the text tool. Alright, I have put my name onto a separate layer from the other layers that have the boxes and this text that says my name and the personality type there. You don't have to. I could still continue, so you don't have to work with just your letter, the letters of your name. Just like in a lot of the examples, there's imagery in the background. So I may want to put that on a separate layer so that could go behind. You know, you could continue working with any of these tools. If you wanted to add something, that may be another box or something like that. I just want to make sure that that is in a layer behind the layer. So I just switched. By default, when I created my new layer, it went on the top, and then I just clicked and dragged. So layer 3 is now below layer 2. And so you're welcome to work with those kind of things as well. I'm going to turn that off for a second. And then lastly, so there are some other tools over here which you may want to play with. You don't have to, but maybe just take this as an opportunity to kind of explore what you could do in Illustrator. There are these tools, the whip, the warp, and twirl, and crystallize tools, and so on and so forth. So these can be kind of fun. They also don't use them for all of them, because then all of your practice will end up looking exactly the same. But I could take my warp tool, for example, and then just gently warp the letters. And this is another way I could start getting the letter forms to be manipulated. I mean, you really could do this manually as well by grabbing your anchor points. But this could be kind of interesting, you know, for some of them, especially for ones where it's supposed to look like an acrobat. And you can certainly work with it with manipulating these anchor points. So let's say I want to make my R kind of stretch more, and then I could, so I have that stretch more, and now I could go back and take the warp tool and you know, see how I can continue to stretch it even further. Okay, so I hope this gives you a good setup. Oh, I see that I actually just warped the outline, so you have to be really careful about that as well. I'm going to have to undo that. So I hope this gives you enough for a good setup. You know, our goal here is we're still thinking about symmetry and asymmetry. So do think about where your name is placed in relationship to its space, which are these little boxes. You know, on some of them, you're welcome to switch this so the text is black. Maybe white. Maybe you make your whole background black, make this text white, and play with the figure-ground relationship. So continue thinking about the negatives. Think about unity. How can we create unity? So perhaps some, repetition of colors. And then we're also using this as essentially a technical practice to learn a little bit more about Illustrator and about creating outlines and how we can manipulate the letter forms through the outlines and adding our own anchor points. Okay? Let me know if you have any questions.